I'm Atra El-Nashar in Washington. Another interest rate cut is expected at the end of this month when the Federal Reserve gathers for its next meeting. However, their job is getting tougher the longer the government shutdown lasts because the economic experts whose job it is to generate critical jobs and inflation reports are furloughed. During this government shutdown, the Federal Reserve, in the middle of a highly anticipated series of interest rate cuts, is without its usual roadmap. Here was Fed Chair Jerome Powell 13 days before the government shut down.
It's deeply in our culture to do our work based on the incoming data and never consider anything else.
Ahead of the Fed's next decision on interest rates coming October 29th, they're without the bulk of the data needed to guide them on their dual mandate, maximum employment and price stability. The monthly jobs report scheduled for release last Friday is indefinitely postponed. Next week, not one but two key inflation reports plus data on import and export prices are expected to be due.
As time goes by, it will get worse. There's no question the best jobs data in the world come from the Bureau of Labor Statistics. We need that data. We want that data. It's going to get farther and farther from the truth. Even the private sector sources rely on the BLS data.
Clarity on the state of the economy is vital. Newly released minutes from the Fed's September meeting reveal uncertainty among central bankers, who noted that progress toward the committee's 2% inflation objective has stalled this year as inflation readings increased and expressed concern that longer-term inflation expectations may rise if inflation does not return to its objective in a timely manner. J.P. Morgan Chase CEO Jamie Dimon sees it the same way.
I'm a little more nervous about inflation not coming down like people expect. That might be a surprise. On the other hand, there's a lot of spending. There's a lot of government spending, which is inflationary too, by the way.
Currently, the Fed is still widely expected to cut rates by a 1/4 percentage point at the end of the month, and then once more by the end of this year. Economists at J.P. Morgan predict that if the shutdown proves to be a long one, the lack of data could further muddy plans for additional cuts in 2026. In Washington, I'm Atra El-Nashar for the National News Desk, America's News Now.
Shutdown stalemate continues as the Democrats continue to hold government funding hostage. A major inflection point will be when federal paychecks are supposed to go out next week if this shutdown continues. Joining us now to discuss, National Taxpayers Union Executive Vice President Brandon Arnold. Good morning to you, Brandon.
Hey, good morning.
Which states are going to be impacted the most? Because senators in those states have to really be feeling the heat right now.
Yeah, of course, every state will be impacted to one extent or another, but you look at the states that have the most federal employees. Those are states like California and, of course, Maryland and Virginia are very close to the nation's capital here. All of those states, incidentally, have 2 Democratic senators here, so they could be very influential as they start to hear more and more from disgruntled constituents.
Yeah, and Brandon, we know this is not our first shutdown. It's not going to be our last. So are there protections in place, federal credit unions or programs that get triggered to help some of these federal employees pay bills since this is likely they're going to miss some paychecks?
Yeah, most banks and credit unions have some degree of flexibility and are willing to work with military members and other federal employees to make sure that their credit scores aren't destroyed, make sure that they're not having their houses foreclosed upon them. And even some state and local governments, like here in Maryland, do have some assistance programs to make sure that this isn't as disruptive as it could be.
Democrats, as you mentioned, holding government funding hostage, demanding $1 trillion in new spending, including extending those Obamacare subsidies, which, by the way, one of the most expensive laws ever enacted and has been a disaster since we know it is not affordable and has not helped our healthcare industry. Talk about the reasons. There's been talk of repealing it even for 15 years now.
Yeah, I mean, Obamacare has been one of the most controversial laws in this country's history. It was promised, of course, that it would bend the cost curve down. That basically has not happened. We've seen medical costs escalate much faster than inflation, and it is the largest spending item in the federal budget right now when you look at our combined health care programs. So it's been an enormous cost, and by and large, it's been an enormous failure. And this effort right now to have these enhanced credits, we're not even talking about core Obamacare. What we're fighting about in Congress right now are supersized Obamacare tax credits that were supposed to only exist for the pandemic, but have continued and now Democrats want to make them permanent.
Right. And as far as non-essential workers are concerned in the government, we are $37 trillion in debt. Why couldn't this be an opportunity to also look at trimming the workforce? And shouldn't there already be a plan in place anyway for that?
There should be, and I think DOJ started that work. But there's no question that we have a lot of waste in the federal government. We have a lot of excess employees that are spending more time checking their fantasy football scores and their social media feeds than they are serving the nation's public. That's not to denigrate all federal employees. There's plenty out there doing a phenomenal job. But yeah, this is an opportunity where we need to trim the fat, trim away some of that excess and make the government leaner and more efficient.
National Taxpayers Union Executive Vice President Brandon Arnold, thanks for joining us.
Thanks, Jen.
Wednesday marks day 8 of the federal government shutdown, and Congress is no closer to reaching an agreement to fund the government. Effects of the shutdown are starting to hit airports across the country as air traffic controller shortages trigger mass delays. On the 8th day of the government shutdown, the Senate failed for the 6th time to pass a short-term budget. The impasse leaves federal workers without pay. It's believed to be behind an uptick in sick calls from air traffic controllers, who are already in short supply, often expected to work 10-hour days, 6 days a week.
Air traffic controllers are going to go to their primary job, but then they'll start having to take up a second job to ensure they have a steady stream of income.
Next week, air traffic controllers will receive their last partial paycheck until the government reopens. Working during the shutdown as an air traffic controller is made even more stressful by the fact that about 2,000 of their support staff are furloughed, burdening their already strained resources.
Unfortunately, this is the system that we have, critically understaffed with unreliable equipment.
So understaffed at some facilities that it doesn't take more than a couple sick calls to stifle the entire operation.
When there is a slowdown, a delay, or disruption in one part of the country, then there is a ripple effect, and it's going to affect the entire country.
CEO of the Flight Safety Foundation, Dr. Hassan Shahidi, expects delays to get worse heading into this weekend and next week.
I really hope that we don't get this dragging on into the holidays. That would be a disaster.
And this shutdown?
We've been here before. Ground stops and mass delays along the East Coast in 2019 helped pressure Congress and then President Trump to end the longest ever government shutdown of almost 35 full days, during which federal workers missed 2 paychecks. That's not the case this time around, at least not yet. Neither party is budging.
We're all here because President Trump has not come to the negotiating table.
This shutdown is nothing more than political cover for Chuck Schumer and the Democrats.
Senate Republican leadership plans to keep holding votes on the same short-term budget that's failed 6 times until Democrats change their minds. But there's no sign of that or any real negotiations between the parties. On Capitol Hill, I'm Atra El-Nashar.
But I wanted to talk to them about what impact this shutdown has on their lives, on their ability to do their jobs. And so these air traffic controllers, they're critical infrastructure. They're critical to the operation of the federal government. So they're required to show up for work. And when they come to work, I want them to think about the departures and arrivals of airplanes. I want to make sure they keep Americans safe and airplanes safe. But what the consistent message was from these controllers was they're not just now thinking about the airspace and the jobs they have to do in these towers or TRACONs or centers across the country. They're thinking about, am I going to get a paycheck? And their paychecks should come a week from tomorrow. And so now what they think about as they're controlling our airspace is, how am I going to pay my mortgage? How do I make my car payment? I have a couple kids at home. How do I put food on the table? I'm working 6 days a week. Do I have to take a second job and drive Uber when I'm already exhausted from doing a job that's already stressful, to think about how I can make extra money because the government may not provide me a paycheck? So in a job that's already stressful, this shutdown has put way more stress on our controllers at a time when they're already working on equipment from the 1960s, 1980s, 1990s. We asked them to do their jobs on equipment that has not been state-of-the-art. We asked them to do their jobs on old equipment and keep our airports operational at a time when they don't have the best equipment at their disposal. And so I wanted to hear them out. I wanted to hear their concerns and make sure that that those who shut the government down, I want to make sure that Chuck Schumer and Hakeem Jeffries know that this is not consequence-free. There are issues that arise throughout America that impact our everyday lives, that can impact our safety when you shut the government down. And again, up in the tower, these are great American patriots. They're American citizens who are serving the American people. And I think it begs the question, why? Why would Chuck Schumer want to shut the government down and focus on people who are not American citizens and their health care?